You are listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. Sustainable World Radio brings you in-depth interviews, news, and commentary about positive solutions to environmental challenges. Solutions that adhere to the permaculture ethics of earth care, people care, fair share. Are you interested in learning more about permaculture projects around the globe? How to plant a food forest? Restorative design or ethnobotany? Then stay tuned for Sustainable World Radio. I'm your host and producer, Jill Cloutier. My guest today is Delia Carroll, and Delia is co-organizing an upcoming conference for women and permaculture, and this is happening at Camp Hamilton near Monroe, Washington, which I think is close to Seattle.
That's right.
Delia, for those who have never heard of the Women's West Coast Permaculture Gathering, tell our listeners a bit about, the details about this gathering, and then we'll get into more specific things about what's going to be going on.
All right. The West Coast Women's Permaculture Gathering is a biannual gathering of women permaculturists. This is the fourth one, and this particular gathering is happening in Camp Hamilton, which is really just about an hour from the airport in Seattle, an hour from SeaTac. It's a really fun thing that the gathering changes location every 2 years. The first gathering was in Quail Springs.
I was there.
You were there?
Yes. Were you there?
No, I wasn't. I made it to the second gathering in Cazadero.
I wasn't there.
It was a good one. And I got totally inspired. I remember coming home from that gathering and literally filling a notebook with ideas and inspiration. And I was so alight and delighted after having met up with all those women, some of whom were in my original permaculture design class. So it was just really great and inspired me to sign on to the organizing team. So I spent the next year organizing the gathering in Southern Oregon, which happened in 2012, which was really fun. I mean, as an organizer, I learned a lot, and I think that, all the participants had a great time. And I think what was notable about that gathering was we, as a group, there were probably 100 of us there, we were able to be very flexible and rearrange our schedule according to what the group desire was. So we really spent a lot of time just hanging out together around the fire circle.
That sounds wonderful. And how many people are you expecting to attend this gathering?
We are expecting between 120 and 150 participants.
And the theme this year is contributing and collecting in collaboration. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, we've been, the themes have been building on each other. The theme of the one in Cazadero was self-care. How do we continue to refresh ourselves and not be burned out and keep on doing our work? So that whole gathering focused around that theme. The theme of the gathering in Ashland was our stories, our actions. I think it was our actions, our lessons, our stories. So we spent a lot of time getting to know each other and telling our particular stories to each other. And then the theme of this one brings it out of the personal and into the collective, which is, collaboration. How do we make a living doing this? How do we support ourselves in this work? And how can we better work together to make sure that we continue to be effective in the world or become more effective in the world?
In our previous talk today, we were talking a bit about how we translate our passion into work. And one thing on your website that I found really interesting was it said that the focus of this gathering is taking permaculture beyond an interest or hobby to finding right livelihood. Could you speak to that?
Well, isn't that a deeply held desire? I think that many of us have been toying with this philosophy and wondering how we can fit ourselves into it. What does a livelihood look like where we are taking care of ourselves and the planet and making a living in this world today. So many of our presenters are doing just that, and that's, a main reason why we are presenting them. They're inspiring examples of how people are moving permaculture theory and practice out into the world and managing to make a living at it.
Mm-hmm. And we're speaking too how sometimes with women there is that pattern of doing work and then having your passion. And I think not even with women, but with many people, male and female, where you're working at a job and then doing your passion on the side.
Oh, it's so true. And people have been tussling with this for a long time. You may remember that book, a boy from the 70s, that was a huge bestseller, What Color is Your Parachute?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And all of that sort of stuff tried to fit your particular passion into the existing reality, into the dominant paradigm. All right? How do you find a job in what I have always called the real world? How do you find a job using your particular passion in that world? And I think as time has gone on, and my particular understanding, and I believe myself to be not alone in this, has broadened out to see how the world is beset by so many problems. The desire has become how to use my passion to turn around the direction that our culture is heading in, and regenerate the world, as opposed to treat it as a place where we can extract as many resources as we want and throw away what we don't need. I think we all see how problematic that is, and we all want to devote our energy and our passion and our unique offerings into regeneration.
And tell us, Delia, why you feel it's important for women to gather and to talk and to do permaculture at this time.
It's so important for us to gather physically in the same place. I know it's a huge effort. We come from all up and down the West Coast, but something happens when we're in each other's presence. That doesn't happen, for instance, while I'm enjoying talking to you very much. We're talking across the radio waves or talking through the internet, and it's satisfying, but there's something missing. There's something big missing. And I believe what's missing is, if you accept that people are electromagnetic beings and our energy extrudes beyond the barrier of our skin, when we get in a crowd together, all of that energy gets mixed up, and something happens that's very different than just a phone conversation or email or Facebook, or the ways that we all forced to communicate because we're on this crazy Western culture treadmill that we can't get off of, right?
Mm-hmm. So true.
Yeah.
For someone who's listening and has never attended one of these events, maybe tell us what happens at a women's permaculture gathering. And I know it's a lot and we'd be talking for hours, but maybe some of the highlights for you and what people might be able to expect when they sign up.
Well, if you come, there will be delicious food. Somebody else will cook for you. That's a big draw.
That
You
sounds
won't
great.
have to clean up either.
Okay, that's it. I'm buying. Does it only last 3 days? No.
It does. I know. And we have 7 highly inspiring women presenting. And we've arranged it so that, unlike a typical conference, you don't have to decide between presenters. We've arranged it so that each presenter can have the attention of the entire crowd, which means that no one will have to decide between, for instance, listening to Starhawk or listening to Marisha Arbacher. So that was feedback we got from 2012 that we really took to heart. We feel that people want a relaxing, inspiring weekend with emphasis on the relaxing. This is really meant to send you away filled up and re-inspired and ready to show your passion to the world. So in terms of schedule, we'll have bioregional breakouts the first night. And we'll have a ritual opening on Friday morning. Then we will go to workshops. We'll have open space in the afternoon. Do you know open space meetings?
I know. Tell us what those are.
Okay, it's actually really exciting. Anyone who's moved can say they're going to talk about a particular subject in a particular place at a particular time. There will be a large grid where you can just plug yourself and your subject into this grid. People looking at that grid, if they're interested in what you want to talk about, will go to where you are and you have a conversation. The commitment you make when you put yourself on the schedule is to stay there for the entire hour and take notes on the conversation so that they can be shared later. And the other people who are going to the conversations, their commitment is to participate, and if they are not feeling participatory, to move on to a different conversation. We call that, you can be a bee, a busy bee, staying in one place and gathering information and contributing, or a butterfly flitting around from conversation to conversation. It's a great way to, in a very condensed time frame, to hit on a lot of topics. And at the end, all of the notes get posted so you can see what happened in each of the conversations if you're interested.
That sounds really interesting. I bet there's some great topics.
There are.
So, Delia, if you could share with us some of the presenters and what they're going to be talking about.
I would be happy to. We have Jessie Bloom. She has an environmental design landscape company. It's won numerous awards. She's a writer. She wrote a book called Free Range Chicken Gardens, and she has a book coming out this summer called Practical Permaculture Design. I can't wait to meet her. She's done a lot. She started her company 13 years ago when she thought she wanted to be a landscaper and realized she had to get a pesticide applicator's license in order to do that. And she said, I'm not going to do that. I'm starting a landscape company that doesn't use pesticides. So, that's something.
Yes, I could relate to that.
We really want to celebrate that and learn from her. Another woman who's presenting is Jacqueline Freeman, and I'm so excited that she's coming back. She was at our gathering in 2012, and we just all fell in love with her. She's a biodynamic beekeeper and really someone who speaks bee. I learned more about bees listening to her for an hour than I ever imagined. She's so heartfelt and so the word I keep using is inspiring, but she really is someone who is able to talk about how interconnected we are in a way that is articulate and inspiring.
Presenters are some women I've never heard of. I'm so excited to learn more from them.
Right. And yes, and I have never met Emmett, and I apologize in advance for probably mispronouncing her last name, but I believe it to be Dugurbenci. She's a native of Turkey. She now lives in Seattle. She founded an organization called Innermost Gardens, which was a project with refugee and immigrant women in New Zealand. She won a Universal Peace Prize for this, given by the UN in 2009. Now she's going to be talking to us about, this is so important. I mean, as an aside here, I meet so many young women who are very inspired about permaculture and very excited about doing international work. And Emmett is going to talk to us about the things you need to take into consideration before you get out there and start trying to do international work. Things like learning the culture first, how to make connections with local people, what is culturally appropriate work, how do you make inclusive designs, and then how do you make sure those designs are implemented and maintained over time. So she has a lot of experience in this arena, and I just am very excited to hear what she has to say.
Sounds like a very diverse group of presenters.
It is. But I have to say, we made an effort this year, and I think that this is going to hopefully be our direction going forward, to draw our presenters from the geographic area where the gathering is occurring. So all of these women have strong ties to the Pacific Northwest. Many of them currently live there. I think maybe Starhawk is the only one who doesn't live within 200 miles of the gathering.
Wow. And how do you decide where it's going to be held?
Well, we've been moving north. We're making an assumption that we'll go back to Quail Springs. However, this is a very dynamic group of women, and it may well be that we have an open space session about the direction of the gathering. So I can't really say. We may decide to continue into Canada and up to Alaska, and then or head south into Mexico. I don't know. The complications of organizing a gathering that's out of this country may stop us, but we're very committed to traveling up and down at least the West Coast, feeling like every time we gather, our network and our knowledge of each other strengthens. And we feel like that's a very worthy endeavor to have a real sense of who your sisters are up and down the West Coast of this country is a really great gift. We've also got Jeanette Acosta coming, who really addresses the inner work that is so often overlooked in permaculture. The working title of her presentation is Traditional Indigenous Knowledge, Values, and a Maritime Culture Perspective. She says she's going to talk about Indigenous permaculture, which revolves around 5 basic principles: recollection, recognition, respect of culture, decolonization of our minds, our language, our work, our communities, being and becoming native to place, and eco-cultural restoration.
Wow, that sounds fabulous.
That is a huge topic. And, it brings me to Starhawk, who's also going to be in attendance, leading a panel or being on a panel, I'm not sure which, about women and climate change. But for years, I've referred to Starhawk's definition of permaculture as the one that's closest to my own heart. And she has said that permaculture is a way to become indigenous to your home. Mm. And for me, that makes my heart open up, understanding that at one time we were all indigenous to somewhere.
I love that.
Right. And that permaculture is a roadmap back to that place.
I'm writing that down.
Right.
That is great. So Starhawk is going to be there as well.
Yeah, she's been to each of the gatherings, and I believe that she was one of the main inspirations and movers behind getting them started.
And then I noticed too on your website that you had a lot of plant people and ethnobotanists that will be speaking.
Eagle Song Evans Gardner, who I met in 2012 at the Southern Oregon gathering. She is so inspiring. She's a herbalist in the wise woman tradition, and she'll be there talking about seeds, greens, roots, and dreams, dancing autumn's alchemy. I'm so excited. We also have a ethnobotanist, Lindsay Hutman. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She has a particular speciality of the native plants in the Northwest. So she'll be talking to us about those plants.
That sounds great. So really something for everyone who is interested in permaculture.
That's right. Marisha Auerbach will also be with us, and she's going to talk about soil improvement, a permaculture approach to tending and building soil. So if you haven't seen Marisha, it's going to be a really worthwhile presentation. She's a very good presenter, very clear and very organized, and very, very heartfelt. And she's going to touch on all sorts of subjects of great interest to people who are trying to grow plants, because as we're all beginning to understand, it's really not about growing the plants, it's about growing the soil.
That sounds so fun. And so when is this happening?
This is happening September 18th through the 21st, which is it ends the day before the autumnal equinox. So we have always felt that that's an appropriate time to gather in that moment of balance between the light and the dark. And especially poignant this year, we are meeting 2 days before the dark of the moon, which is a time when traditional elders gathered to set the intention for the next month the next year, the next decade, the next 7 generations. So for this group of highly motivated, highly passionate, and uniquely beautiful women to be meeting in the week before the dark of the moon is a really special opportunity for us to put our heads, hearts together, to put our heads and hearts together and collectively decide our direction.
Are people going to be camping when they go there, or what are their accommodations like?
Camp Hamilton has bunkhouses, so because it's the Pacific Northwest, we went that way. You have a roof over your head. You won't get rained on. You have a bed in a bunkhouse, some of which have bathrooms right in the bunkhouse, and some don't, but no bunkhouse is more than a 2-minute walk to a bathroom. You have to bring your own bedding, but that's the setup. Camp Hamilton is on 575 acres with a lake in the middle and hiking trails all around, so we're expecting a really wonderful experience. There's a nice dining lodge and good meeting areas and a big fire circle.
So if women are interested in attending this, where can they find more information on this, and how can they get tickets?
You can go to our website, which is westcoastwomenspc.weebly.com. And the website has all of the information. You can buy tickets right through the website. You can also fill out an application for work trade, and it's all there. The schedule will be up shortly, but profiles of all the presenters are currently up.
I want to just ask a couple more questions about the event. One is, why a women's gathering? Women only is right. The first question. And then how can men, if they want to participate or contribute to this, how can they do so?
Mm-hmm. Permaculture is pretty dominated by men. And we felt that it would be really useful for us to see, number one, to see who we are, to see who the women are in permaculture and what they're doing. And there's a specialness to a gathering of only women. You know, when you remove all of the charge of the male-female dynamic, we settle in more to who we are and can enjoy each other in a way that maybe we don't when we're in mixed group settings. So we felt like it was just a really fun way to get together. You know, we are women and we have this common bond of a passion for permaculture.
I do have a lot of male listeners. If a man is listening and wants to participate in some way or contribute, is there any way that they can do so?
Yes, there is. First, I want to tell you a lovely story. At the 2012 gathering, Rebecca Newbern came. I don't know if you know Rebecca. She started the Richmond Seed Library.
I've heard of her.
Yeah, a very inspiring project. Her boyfriend couldn't come and felt a little sad about that, but really wanted to acknowledge how important it was for her and the rest of us to have a weekend together. And he sent her up to Cazadero with hundreds of roses. I don't know, he had been taking care of a garden somewhere and pruned all the roses, and we had buckets of roses all throughout the weekend. It was just so lovely. It was such a heartfelt gift. It was a great thing. So in other ways that men can support us is to be happy that your woman or your women friends are going. Be happy that we have a chance to get together. Another thing men can do is meet themselves with other men and take a look at gender dynamics in the permaculture world. I think that that's an important interior and community dialogue that needs to happen, just because that kind of work is an ongoing process, and we learn things about ourselves every time we look at it. So we ask that the men in our lives continue to grow and do interior work as well as all the great, physical permaculture work that goes on. And lastly, Men who want to make a monetary contribution are more than welcome. There's a donate button on the webpage where they could chip into the scholarship fund. Or they could stay home with the kids and send their partners off.
And I did read that, is there childcare at the event?
There is, and this is something that's a hallmark of these gatherings. We really believe that women with children need to be supported by the entire community, so childcare is free. You do need to buy a ticket for your child's meals, but there's no extra cost for childcare on site, and we have, qualified licensed childcare providers. I believe it's 10 hours a day.
Not only men, but if someone's listening and they can't, they live too far away, they can't make it to the event, they could always donate to help support this event.
They could. That would be lovely. It's a new event, and in 2012 was the first year we made enough money to begin to offer scholarships. So we have 2 full scholarships to offer this year, and we hope that in the future we'll have many more.
Sounds like a really fantastic event. And Delia, is there anything else that you want to tell our listeners about this gathering before we sign off today?
I think the truest thing I can say about these gatherings is how meaningful they've been for me. It's been so heartening to actually meet so many other women who share the permaculture ethics of earth care, people care, and fair share. So I keep using the word inspiring, but that's what it is, to be in the presence of so many women working in the same direction I am. Every time I come home renewed, reinvigorated, and ready to roll.
That's worth going, just to get that connection with other women that have the same interests. I think there's nothing like it.
It's so true. And it's a deepening. Now, when I see those faces on Facebook or I hear about them doing some work, I know them and I can feel the connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's do you know the story of Indra's net?
No.
It's a Hindu story. And I'm sorry, I can't pinpoint it to the exact mythology, but Indra's net is a net. Each node in the net, each place where the strings connect, is a point of light. And I always visualize this net as each woman as a node in the net. And when there's enough of us, we we blanket the planet. We can have a real effect together that we can't individually.
Mm-hmm. It's like George Bush's 1,000 points of light, but
That's right. He knew not what he spoke of, huh?
Exactly. But I like your version better. Well, this has been great to talk with you. So again, if people are interested in learning more about the Women's West Coast Permaculture Gathering, they can visit West Coast Women's, is it PC?
It is.
.weebly.com to
That's
learn
right.
more. Yeah. And thank you so much for talking with me today. And hopefully I will see you there.
Oh, yeah, please come, Jill. It would be so great to meet you face to face. And thanks for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you. You've been listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. You can find us online at sustainableworldradio.com and also on iTunes. For more information about permaculture and ecology, visit the Sustainable World Media YouTube channel, where you'll find videos about permaculture, aquaponics, organic gardening, rainwater harvesting, and much, much more. Sustainable World Radio is a listener-supported program. If you like what we do, please consider making a donation to the show. I'm your host and producer, Jill Cloutier, and thank you so much for listening. Our first documentary, The Soil Solution, is now available at sustainableworldmedia.com. The Soil Solution is a 28-minute documentary film that explores the potential that healthy soil may hold in reversing climate change.